In this opportunity, we will learn about the Mexico localization for Business Central. The Mexico localization is an extension that we can download directly from AppSource. This means that it is certified by the best practices of Microsoft. When installing this localization, it will bring us different fields and functionalities in Business Central that will allow us to comply with each one of the fiscal requirements demanded by the Mexican tax authorities. In today's presentation, we are going to see what these fields are, the different functionalities, such as the calculation of income tax withholdings, the calculation of VAT withholdings, taxes, additional taxes such as IEPS local taxes, local withholdings, electronic stamping, reports such as the DOT report, among other functionalities. Now we are going to generate a small operational transactional flow in which we are going to make a purchase, see the behavior, the calculation of withholdings. We make a sale, we review the issue of electronic stamping, of sales invoices, of payment complements, of cancellations, and finally, the subject of reporting, such as, for example, generating the carried forward DOT. Initially, we are going to enter purchases and we are going to go to our supplier section. I'm going to enter any supplier, and apart from all the standard settings for the supplier, such as address and contact, invoicing, and so on, we're going to be able to link withholding codes to the supplier as a suggestion. What does this mean? That when I am executing a purchase document, the system will suggest these withholding codes, which are also fully modifiable within the document. We will find, for example, VAT withholdings, income tax withholdings, federal entity, to inform the federal entity which is going to apply the local withholding. The local withholding, we will select, for example, ISR withholdings. We will find two withholding codes for this example. The same mention here is that we can create how many withholding codes? ESR, VAT, and local withholding. We need our business activity. Let's select, for example, completely. And here we can create how many codes required by our activity, business. Likewise, for example, local withholding. I have created two codes, one at 5% of the 1,000 and another at 5% of the cellular rate. Apart from all the configuration that the supplier may have, also within the product master, we are going to find the parameterization of the different taxes. For example, I'm going to enter to our product, or in this case, hosting service, and this hosting service normally transacts with a 16% VAT, but may also have an additional tax, which would be the IEPS for 7.36%, and I also add to this service the local tax, in this case the lodging tax of 2.5%. These different taxes can be applied simultaneously for both purchases and sales, as well as for sales, according to how we are configuring the product and we are going to sell or buy. Now we are going to create a purchase invoice. We are going to enter the purchase module and purchase invoice. There are two ways to create a purchase invoice: by entering new, which would be a manual invoice adding the supplier and the items or services, and the other is through creating invoices from XML. This functionality, we have developed it to load recognizes the information and add a purchase invoice. To be able to work with it and later register it, we are going to indicate new to create an invoice manually. First, we select the supplier, type in the invoice number, and call up the products. We are going to enter the quantity. And notice how the system brings me as a suggestion the different withholding codes. Both income tax withholdings, VAT withholdings, and local withholdings. If for the invoice it is necessary to apply some type of additional tax, we will be able to do it, and also the local tax. If we wish to modify, for example, this code is not 4%, but 10.67%, we will be able to do it without any problem. This allows us for every line of invoice we can and parameterize the different codes that we add. That is for one, the 10.67, which is 2/3 of the VAT, and for another item, we are going to handle the 4% VAT withholding if we so desire. Now we are simply going to indicate a preview, and it will generate different movements. In VAT movements, we are going to be able to visualize what would be the calculation of each one of the tax and withholding of taxes and withholding. For example, here we have the 5% cellular withholding, the base of 7 million, the amount of 350,000, and we will also find what would be the local withholding, the withholding code, and the tax percentage. Here we mention the issue of tax moments. What does this mean? It means that the system will calculate a base and an unrealized amount at the moment of registering the invoice. Once I make the payment of that invoice, the system, this base and amount, will automatically reclassify it to the base and amount already made. To better understand the concept, we will go to accounting movements. And here basically what the system does is to send the amounts to the accounting account. This is fully parameterizable. We tell the system to which accounts I want each of the tax amounts to travel to, taxes and withholdings. For example, here we have the 3,500, and this 3,000 corresponds or will travel to a local withholding of local retention account. Once I execute the payment of this invoice, the system will reclassify that account, taking out this amount of 3,000 account, taking out this amount of 3,500, and sending it to a realized local withholding account. This is done automatically, and we are going to visualize how this process would look like. Here we are simply going to register the invoice, confirm that everything is correct, and we are going to register the payment of that invoice. We are going to go to the payment journal, select any journal or template, select the supplier, we indicate the invoice we want to pay or register that payment. We have it. We click on accept, and already here the system links what would be the invoice with the amount. I indicate preview, and the system here in accounting movements makes the reclassification. Those 350 that I mentioned before. Debits or debits are debit movement from the unrealized local withholdings account, and then debit or makes a credit or credit transaction for the same amount to a realized local withholding account. Let's remember that it is totally parameterizable. We tell the system to which accounting account I want each tax and withholding, each one of the taxes and withholdings, and at what time I want these accounts be debited and credited. I simply indicate to register, and in this way I finalize the process of a purchase or a purchase invoice. Manually, we are going to enter purchase invoice again. The other alternative to create a purchase invoice is to indicate it new. Create invoice via XML, and now we are going to load the XML file. Previously, we must have a small parameterization so that this can happen. Here I am going to select the XML. I indicate to load. Here the invoice was uploaded successfully. If I enter, for example, the invoice, we will find that it relates me the supplier and the items that are previously referenced in that XML. Here the system, as I have the supplier configured for the different withholding codes, and the item for the tax codes would simply be to register and give a prior view or indicate a preview. VAT movements to verify the correct calculation of each of the taxes and withholdings, and accounting movements to see the distribution of the amounts at the account level. Checking this record, we will instruct you to record. It is stored in a history of purchase invoices. I indicate that I do not want to go because I want to go by the mode. I give you a history of purchase invoices, and I press what would be the invoice that I have just registered, and I go down a little bit and I can see that the invoice is saved. For example, this is the invoice, and here I am going to save what would be the fiscal invoice number of the tax. Here the invoice is already marked. For this important code is saved to reference this purchase invoice. The other alternative to load UID to the purchase invoice or to that historical purchase invoice is to indicate process and load UID. Here we load the XML file so that it links that UID to the invoice. We are going to select from the list, and the system will do several validations. For example, if I indicate folio, the system will tell me that the RFC does not coincide with that of the supplier of the invoice, which forces us to load the correct one. We are going to give it to open, and it tells me that the UID was updated. If I go inside the invoice and go down a little bit to electronic invoice, pack tax invoice number, I can verify what would be the fiscal invoice number. Now we go to the sales module, and we are going to generate different electronic timbrados. From a sales invoice to export sales invoices, payment complements, transfer letter, electronic cancellation, credit notes, and finally the topic of report. We are going to enter first to sales and sales orders. Sales, I am going to generate the stamping of a letter of credit for transfer when Pro vehicles are available. I am going to enter a sales order previously registered, in which I have information, customer's header, product line, and in the electronic document section I am going to be able to inform what would be the information that the fiscal entity requires. For example, transit hours, state transport operator, type and code of vehicle vehicle, insurer name and policy number and other information. From this sales order, I will generate a shipment, a sales delivery note, or a sales rendition. From this section, I am going to generate electronic stamping and waybill. How am I going to do it? I go to and I will select send to electronic stamping or send to our box. How does the stamping work? We are going to press that button that will generate a TXT with all the necessary information and required for the stamp. This arrives to our technology provider, to our pack, and they set the direct connection with the fiscal entity. And Business Central returns us what would be the status of the electronic document. Here we press send process, it generates the TXT, and this finally travels to the pack. The pack has the connection with the fiscal entity. It automatically returns the status of the electronic document. I get this error because I am in a test environment. In this way, if I enter the sales delivery note, we will be able to visualize more information of the complement of the letter of credit by transfer. When we have our own vehicles such as, for example, signature data mapping, cartouche, electronic document status, and much more. Remember that we can issue complement of carte de carte for when goods are shipped to the customer and also when transferring goods between our own warehouses. Now let's go to a sales invoice and do the stamping of the sales invoice. Enter sales invoice, and we are going to create a sales invoice from scratch. Now we add the customer and fill in the necessary data. We select the hosting service of ours at a cost of 2,500 Mexican pesos. The system brings me in the line as previously, which would be the lodging service, the 16% VAT, the 5% lodging tax, and an additional tax, which in this case would be the VAT. And an additional tax, which in this case would be the VAT. If it is required for sales, any type of withholding, we will also be able, these codes making the opposite effect of the purchase. Okay, some information, for example, such as the SATI catalogs are implicit in the invoice or document. For example, the document, for example, let's see, what would be payment terms? If I enter payment terms, we will be able to visualize the SAT catalog to which our payment method corresponds. Payment method in the same way. For example, to make mention with payment method. Well, here we are going to find what would be the form of payment according to catalog. So here we can select and link it or relate it to that form of payment. Okay, it works the same for unit of measure, item code, and much more. Now simply, we are going to register this invoice. We indicate that I don't want to go look at it, and I'm going to go for the module, historical invoices module. The logic will be the same. We will find a button, electronic stamping button, which we will be able to stamp what would be the invoice. All the information will be TXT and is sent to the pack, and the pack has the direct connection, and the PASI has the direct connection with the fiscal entity and returns us the status of the electronic document. Returns us what would be the status of the electronic document. If there is any type of error, it will also return what the error would be. For example, as you can see here, When it is stamped, the sent status will appear. Okay, we will also be able to generate what would be sales invoices when they are required. For sales invoices with foreign trade complement, we are going to enter again an invoice, randomly select any invoice, and we are going to foreign trade. We are going to activate the foreign trade check, and we are going to inform the different catalogs for the subject of foreign trade. For example, the export code, the norms or rules Incoterms of trade. We will also find the pedimento code. All this information will travel in this TXT that will finally reach the fiscal entity to our technological supplier with all the information required for foreign trade. We will also be able to stamp or make use of the electronic cancellation. Let's go to sales invoice history. I am going to look for an invoice that has been stamped. And I am going to make an electronic cancellation to this invoice. Electronic cancellation. Okay, we are going to select the reason. In this case, for example, if I put voucher issued with errors, it tells me to enter the new document. Okay, any of these codes, we are going to hit send, and the system still sends the information to the pack. It remains in pending status, and then we simply verify it and the status will be cancelled. Another type of document that we can stamp would be sales credit notes. Also, in the same way, we are going to enter the history of registered credit notes. We are going to find the button electronic stamping. We are going to make use of this button, and the system then will show us the status sent, and it will return the pack tax invoice number. And if there is any type of error, it will also return us the code and the code in the description of the error. Another type of document of CFDI that we can stamp is the payment complement. For this, I will go to Treasury, Payment Journal, select any template, and I'm going to register the payment or the collection from our client. We are going to settle the invoice that we have just recorded. Indicate process mark ID. We link the invoice and we make the payment entry or the payment record or the recording of the payment or collection. Now we go to sales, to customer movement, and we are going to find what would be the payment that we have just made in this tab. The logic of the stamping is the same. We are going to find a process button and to send to electronic stamping to our pack. He builds what would become the TXT and automatically sends back to us, or sends this to the pack. And the pack has the connection with the fiscal entity, and it returns us what would be the status of the electronic document, the fiscal invoice number, and some type of error. It will also return us what would be the status of the electronic document, and some type of error is also going to return us the error. The error, for example here, it will show what would be the status sent and the fiscal invoice number of that complement of payment. That payment complement can be in dollars paying invoices in pesos, or in pesos paying invoices in dollars, or vice versa. Either way, we will still be able to do the electronic stamping. Now we are going to the topic of reporting. We are going to be able to issue different reports. Among them, we are going to highlight that all withholdings have a specific report. For example, I am going to place here withholding, and we are going to find it supplier withholding, which I can filter the type of withholding and the supplier. I am going to find the withholding for sales supplier, for example, type of withholding if it is VAT, ISR, and what would be filtering the supplier as such. A preview to show me all the information and to be able to visualize a little bit what would be the fields of the consolidated withholdings by supplier, showing me in a very general way details of each one of the withholdings applied, both the amount subject to withholding and the tax withheld. Not only that, we can visualize, we will also find withholdings of income tax and VAT not made, and also the report of withholdings made. We can link the type of withholding, and we select purchases, and we have the report of ISR withholdings and VAT withholdings not made, showing me what would be the information of each of the withholdings, invoices such as percentage, base, and amount. In this case of ISR withholdings and VAT withholdings, we also have the report of VAT not paid and report of what would be VAT realized. We are going to enter here in VAT realized type transaction purchase, and we are going to give it a preview to be able to visualize the different fields. Here we have each one of what would be the information of the realized VAT report, showing me the information of this. We also have what would be, to mention it, local withholding reports made and not made, and also of local taxes paid and not paid. It is important to mention the report which we have in Excel. We select date, let's say the whole year 2023, and we will be able to issue it in Excel to be able to visualize a little or audit the DOT report in Excel, to be able to visualize or appreciate these fields and columns that shows us the DOT report in Excel here with each one of the information. This DOT report is fully customizable. It is worth. Here we can see a little bit of what the DOT report would look like as an example. Even the VAT withheld. Also, that DOT report can be issued in TXT. That is finally the report or the format in which the tax authorities. Here we will be able to generate the DOT in TXT format with all the information that we can visualize in the TXT format. We will also be able to generate the VAT return. Here we have the VAT return, a previous visit. With all the information, this report is totally parameterizable. Here we can visualize. And finally, we will be able to generate what would be the electronic accounting enter to finances, catalogs of accounts, and enter to process, export electronic accounting. And here we can link the report we want, the chart of accounts, the trial balance, transactions, or auxiliary accounts. We simply click on export. It exports a compressed file which has an XML, and this XML contains all the information of the electronic accounting and also the report you need. And last but not least, I invite you to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and activate the notification bell. I also invite you to visit our website, and you will find all the information. You will find all the information about the Mexico localization of the different locations develop now, such as localization that integrates two or more locations in the same production environment. I also invite you to visit our webinar to learn about our flagship product,